All right, what up, though? I'm gonna read through this Roman heritage in Brazil, the PDF read that I was supposed to bring out. Well, I am bringing out. I'm gonna try to get through this as much as I can without any talking to commentate. I'm gonna put this link in the description. I'm gonna skip through and get straight to the core with this. All of this stuff is basically talking about archaeology, and you'll be able to go through the link in the description and read it for yourself. So here we go. Hop straight into it. Brazil today and in the past. Brazil is the largest and most populous country in Latin America with more than 190 million inhabitants and in the area comprising of 8,547,400 square kilometers. Some 50% of the population lives in the countryside, 85% live in cities and towns, and more than half live in cities with more than 100,000 inhabitants. 90% have access to homes, TV. There are more mobile phones than inhabitants, and more than half the literate population has access to the internet. Some 10% of the population is illiterate. Brazil has the third largest social inequality in the world, as indicates the Gini Index. But it has been, hopefully, my mouse cursor is on, diminishing the last few years. Nominal GDP was US dollars $1,543.7, and in 2009, 2,842.36 per capita. The 67th position worldwide. In terms of education and science, Brazil produces 500,000 graduates and 10,000 PhDs a year, 10 times than 2 decades ago. Between 2002 and 2008, it shares the world's scientific papers rose from 1.7% to 2.7%. Uh, so I believe I'm going to skip these two paragraphs and actually, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and read it. Now I turn to Brazilian history. Brazil has been shaped by the medieval Portuguese background of colonization, from patronage Faro 1976 to racial mixing and cultural interaction Funari 2006. The first decades were used to explore the land settled from the mid 16th century. The Portuguese transplanted their experience with sugarcane slave plantations from the Atlantic islands to Brazil and established sugar mills on the coast from Recife to Salvador, while the back lands were left first to some Jesuit priests and then to pioneer settlers who mixed with the local native Indians. During the late period of colonial rule, 1500 through 1822, the colonial power was established in the colony itself in 1808, the only case of modern European colonialism. When the court left Rio de Janeiro to return to Lisbon in 1820, the heir to the throne, Peter, stayed and proclaimed independence in 1822, establishing a monarchy. A monarchy? I don't know what that is. 1822 through 1888. The oligarchic republic established in 1989 was followed by a brief democratic rule 1945 through 1964, but a military coup led to a long dictatorship 1964 to 1985, including persecution, exile, missing people, and much more against dissenters. The restoration of civilian rule led to a sprouting of freedom initiatives, including the exploration of the uses of the past, the subject of our paper. Why the Romans? Now we turn to our subject, Rome, Brazil, and the uses of the past. There is a growing interest in studying how identities are shaped by inventing links, traditional reception, and new critical approaches to ancient roots to an imagined past in Brazil, Funari 2008. I'm going to skip through this. And elsewhere, and one of us, Renata Garafoni, chairs a research group on the subject. You see the link. There has been a plethora of studies on how the past has served to shape identities in the present, to defend interests, foster freedom, on or reinforce oppression. This is particularly the case in archaeological studies concerned with the past uses of the material culture, either to oppressive ends or to critiquing social inequalities and imbalances in the present. In this paper, we focus on the traditional use of Romans in Brazil and then turn to more recent use of archaeological evidence from Pompeii to think through a variety of social relations, including gendered ones in both ancient Rome and present day Brazil, as we demonstrate the Roman past matters in this case to foster diversity and social justice today. Excuse me. Recent work has been done in the importance of Roman identity in Spanish America during the colonial period. There are similar developments in Brazil, particularly in relation to the use of Latin as the scholarly language and model for Brazilian authors. The use of Latin inscriptions in church and other public buildings, and even the Roman models for the description of heroes and foes alike, such as the famous case of Maroon leader Zumbi, described as a reader and emulator of the Roman dictator and general Julius Caesar. I suggest you all go check out a brother named, well, a YouTube author. His page is called um, Education Center, and check out some of his things that he brought out on the whole ape thing. I suggest you check that out. Most of the scholarly research has been centered around the later imperial and republican periods. As we discussed, Portuguese royal court was transferred to Rio de Janeiro, or January River, and that is what it's called in English, in the wake of Napoleon's advance in continental Europe, and it brought to the tropics for the first time the whole array of imperial power. The state was renamed United Kingdom of Portugal, Brazil, and Algarves, and the capital of the empire was established at Rio de Janeiro. I haven't checked the video out, but I suggest you go and check out some brothers from the Sakari, a Hebrew Israelite camp. They have Brazil is in the Bible. I'm going to actually check this video out after I get done with this one. Let's continue. This move led to the importation of the Imperial Library and the establishment of an Imperial Museum, inspired by the Louvre and the British Museum, as a material proof of the splendor of the Portuguese Empire, then stretched across 4 continents. Even though its original European heartland was left to the French, okay, excuse me, I didn't word that to be prepared for a period, but after the expulsion of the French, the court returned to Lisbon, but the former capital of the empire in the tropics retained a host of imperial insignia. All right. Not least the whole classical material culture flavor. The son of the king of Portugal, Peter, was left in Rio de Janeiro, and it did not take long for him to claim Brazil as his own independent country. He did so in 1822, being acclaimed the first Brazilian emperor. Okay. Peter the First and his court were European, and civilization was thus defined as European culture. Greek models were not considered the most appropriate, as Greece was held to be too democratic and effeminate. True. Yeah, they gay. I got nothing against nations outside of my own being faggot sexuals, but my own people, get it together. Let's continue. As well as the civilization having been defeated. Catholicism was another possible source of models, considering the role it played for centuries in Portugal, and even more so as it was soon declared the official state religion by the new monarchy. The symbiosis of regal power and Catholic control over society was deep rooted, but the clergy was under the direct control of the ruler. Catholicism was also associated with the late colonial period, particularly with the 18th century Baroque towns, with their streetscape inspired in medieval Portugal. It was no model for the new empire. Rome was such a model. Imperial Rome and the autocratic power were models for the Brazilian Empire and new moderating power of Peter the First. And I guess that's where the Catholic or Roman Pope is supposed to have taken control of the throne of Peter. But I'm gonna continue. Inspired in the auctoritas of Roman times, the constitution imposed by the emperor states that the moderated power is the key of all political organization, and it is owned privately by the emperor. The concepts come from classical Latin moderare, from well-known authors such as Cicero and his description of God as Deus que regit et moderator, et moet id corpus. Moderation as restriction was the key to discretionary rule by the emperor. Re publicae moderatio, as in Cicero. I'm guessing, I don't know this leg, but I'm gonna continue. Peter the First left Brazil to become Peter the Fourth in Portugal. What? Peter the First left Brazil to become Peter the Fourth in Portugal and his son. I don't get that. Peter II assumed the reins of power until the end of the monarchy in 1889. Peter II was educated in classics since childhood, learning several languages, including Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, as well as modern ones. He was soon to become known as the enlightened ruler for his taste in scholarship and science. Married to a princess from Naples, he was able to get Roman archaeological material from both the Naples area, including Pompeii, as well as excavations elsewhere in the Italian peninsula. This material enriched the National Museum, as the old Imperial Museum was renamed. The National Museum comprised natural wonders but also material culture from all continents, as a proper civilized museum should do. The Historical and Geographic Institute also played a role in the material culture exploration and interpretation. Special attention was given to the material from the provinces of the empire, and Brazilian natives were considered as Gauls in relation to Romans, conquered but part of the empire. The Gauls are the Portuguese. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in the next video to finish some of this off. Out.